At my cousin's wedding, everything was supposed to be perfect. The music, the food, the joy of family coming together. It was all there. But that night, something happened that would change everything. My 8-year-old daughter, Ava, handed me a card. It was meant to be sweet, a simple gesture at a family celebration. But when I opened it, my heart stopped. Fake daughter. It read in bold letters, written in Ava's childlike handwriting. I froze. The room was loud with laughter, music, and clinking glasses, but in that moment, I could hear nothing. Ava, oblivious to the storm she had just caused, looked at me with a smile. I glanced around the room, unsure of what to say. That's when I noticed my brother Ethan standing by the punch bowl, his face unreadable. A sense of dread washed over me as I walked over to him. My brother, the person I had always trusted, the one who had been my closest ally growing up. What did this mean? I grabbed him by the arm and pulled him aside. Why would you let her write something like that? I demanded, voice shaking. The shock and betrayal were too much. Ethan wasn't just my older brother. He was supposed to be someone who had my back. But something was wrong. Something was off. His response hit me like a slap in the face. Well, it's true, he said calmly, as if this was all perfectly normal. You're not her real mother. You're just pretending. You can't make her part of your family. The words sank in, and I couldn't process them right away. I stood there, speechless. The man I had trusted with my life, the brother who had always been my protector, had just told me, plainly, without hesitation, that Ava was a fake daughter, and that I didn't belong in her life. My mind raced. Ethan had never been overly supportive of Ava's adoption, but this was something else. He had always made small, offhand comments over the years, but I'd shrugged them off as ignorant remarks. I had never imagined he would openly undermine me like this, especially in front of the whole family. That night, I tried to shake off the shock. I told myself it was just a moment of frustration. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just one offhanded comment. This was a betrayal that had been building for years, and it was time to face it. I had no idea what Ethan's real feelings were anymore, but I was determined to find out. The wedding reception was in full swing, the air filled with the sounds of clinking glasses, laughter, and upbeat music. Ava, my little girl, tugged on my sleeve, her face bright with excitement as she handed me a card she'd made for me. It was a small gesture, just like all the other little surprises she loved to give me. I smiled and thanked her, feeling a rush of warmth for my sweet, thoughtful daughter. But that moment, so innocent and pure, quickly turned to something unrecognizable. I opened the card, expecting something cute, a simple drawing or a heartfelt message. Instead, the words slapped me in the face. Fake daughter. The room seemed to go silent. I froze, my fingers still holding the card as my heart skipped a beat. The laughter around me faded, and the noise seemed to dull, as if the world was holding its breath. Ava, completely unaware of the storm she'd just caused, smiled up at me with wide eyes, clearly waiting for a reaction. She didn't understand why the card had caused such a stir. To her, it was just a card. But to me, it felt like the world was crashing down. I glanced around, searching for answers. My eyes landed on Ethan, standing by the bar. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something sharp, that made my stomach twist. I felt a chill run through me. I had no idea what was going on, but in that moment, it was clear that my brother knew more than he was letting on. I gently set the card down on the table, my hands trembling, and excused myself from the conversation I had been a part of. I walked straight to Ethan, trying to keep my composure, though inside, my mind was racing. What was happening? Why did Ava write something so cruel? Why would she even think to say something like that? When I reached him, I didn't waste time. Ethan, what is going on? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but edged with an urgency I couldn't hide. Ethan looked at me for a moment, his face still calm, as if nothing had happened. What do you mean? He asked, his voice deliberately neutral. But I could tell from the slight tension in his jaw that he knew exactly what I was referring to. He knew about the card. I pressed on. Why would you let her do that? Why would you let her write something like that? You saw it. You must have known what it would do. He didn't answer right away, his gaze drifting over my shoulder, as if trying to avoid the truth. But when he finally looked at me, his words hit harder than I could have ever anticipated. Well, it's true, he said, his voice flat and cold. She's not really your daughter, Lila. She's not family. The words cut through me like a knife. My heart ached, and my mind couldn't make sense of it. What did he mean by not family? Ava was my daughter. I had raised her, loved her, protected her as my own. But the look in Ethan's eyes told me everything I needed to know. There was no misunderstanding here. He meant every word. And worse, he had been harboring these feelings for longer than I had realized. The betrayal stung so much deeper than I expected. It wasn't just the card. It wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. It was a cold, calculated sentiment, one he had been nursing in the shadows for far too long. As I stood there, staring at him in disbelief, I felt my anger start to boil. The man I had always considered my protector, my ally, was someone I didn't even recognize anymore. I couldn't fathom how he could say such things, especially about Ava. He had been my brother for years, and yet, it felt as if a stranger was standing in front of me now. I couldn't believe I had ever trusted him. The consequences of this moment, this confrontation, were just beginning to sink in. I didn't know what Ethan's true intentions were, but I was determined to find out. One thing was certain, though. This wasn't the end of the story. This was only the beginning. After the wedding, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been broken, something I couldn't fix with a smile or a drink. I had to speak to Ethan, to understand what had happened, to make sense of the words that still echoed in my mind. I wasn't going to let it go. I spotted him by the window, nursing a drink, his gaze distant. I walked over to him, my steps firm, but my heart was racing. I wasn't sure how he would react, but I knew I couldn't leave without answers. "Ethan," I said, my voice low but steady. "We need to talk. Now." He looked up, almost surprised to see me standing there, but there was no warmth in his eyes. "What's up?" he asked, his tone casual, as if nothing had happened. It irritated me, the way he acted like nothing was wrong. I didn't waste time. "What was that about?" "The card. Why would you let Ava write that? Why would you say something like that about my daughter? And why have you been undermining our family for so long?" Ethan didn't respond immediately, his eyes scanning the crowd as if he couldn't care less. The tension hung in the air between us. I felt like I was drowning in it. Finally, he took a slow sip of his drink, then set it down on the windowsill. "You're really going to make a scene over a card?" he asked, his voice dismissive, but his gaze still cold. I clenched my fists, my frustration boiling over. "This is not just about a card. You've been making comments about Ava for years, telling people she's not really my daughter, that she's some charity case. Why?" His expression remained unchanged, almost bored. "Well, it's true," he said flatly, looking at me as though he was waiting for me to get it. "You're just playing pretend." The words hit harder than I expected, each one like a slap in the face. My heart dropped. "What are you talking about? I'm her mother. I've raised her. I love her more than anything." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a slight smirk. "You can't replace someone, Lila. You can't just decide to be someone's mom because you feel like Ava's not your real daughter. You know that. You'll always be an outsider in her life." I felt like the ground beneath me was collapsing. How could he say that? How could he dismiss everything I had done for Ava? Every sacrifice, every tear, every joyful moment together. He had reduced it all to nothing. I tried to hold back the tears, but my voice broke. "I'm not pretending, Ethan. I'm her mother. I've given her everything." Ethan didn't flinch. He looked at me as if I was the one who didn't understand. "That's the problem, isn't it?" he said coldly. "You don't understand. You're not her real mother, no matter how much you try to act like it. You can't change that." I wanted to scream at him, to tell him how wrong he was, but the words wouldn't come. I just stood there, feeling the weight of his rejection like a stone in my chest. "You're wrong," I finally whispered, my voice shaky but firm. "I'm not pretending, and I'm not going to let you destroy this family." Ethan didn't respond. He just turned away, as if the conversation had already ended. My body trembled with a mixture of anger and hurt, but I knew one thing for sure. This was far from over. As I stood there, my mind raced back to the years before all this had started. Ethan and I used to be close, really close. I thought we had a bond that no one could break. But now, standing in front of him, hearing his cold words, I couldn't help but wonder when things had changed. When had I missed the signs? I remembered the day I adopted Ava like it was yesterday. It was a whirlwind of excitement and hope. Ethan had been there, right by my side, smiling and congratulating me as we met Ava for the first time. At that moment, he had seemed genuinely supportive, happy even. He was there for me, saying all the right things. He called Ava sweetheart and precious, holding her in his arms as if nothing could ever tear this family apart. But as the months went by, I began to notice small changes. At family gatherings, Ethan started making little comments. He'd laugh and call Ava the charity case, under his breath, but I always brushed it off as an attempt at humor. Surely he didn't mean it. But the more time passed, the more those remarks began to sting. They became sharper, more frequent. His tone had shifted, and with it, something in his eyes had changed too. Something cold, something resentful. I tried to talk to him about it, asking if something was wrong, but every time, he'd shrug it off, saying I was overthinking. "It's just a joke, Lila," he'd say. "Lighten up." But it wasn't just jokes anymore. The cracks in our relationship were getting bigger, harder to ignore. It was as if the more I poured myself into Ava, the more Ethan withdrew. Then, over time, his comments became more direct. He'd question how I was raising Ava, making snide remarks about her real family, as if to remind me that I was just a placeholder. And it was subtle at first, but the poison began to seep into every conversation. His disapproval became impossible to miss, and I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around him. Every time we spoke about Ava, it felt like he was trying to find a way to undermine my role as her mother. One evening, I caught him talking to our parents. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I overheard him say that Ava would never be one of us. I'd hoped it was just an offhand remark, but deep down I knew it wasn't. It was a sign of the growing resentment inside him, a resentment he had kept hidden, festering until now. That was when it hit me. Ethan wasn't just annoyed or distant, he was angry, and that anger had been building for years. As the years went on, his words and actions became more blatant. He had grown to resent me, to resent Ava, in a way I couldn't understand. But now, as I stood there, trying to comprehend his latest cruel comments, the pieces finally started to come together. Ethan had always been jealous. Jealous of the attention I gave Ava, jealous of the love and happiness we shared. And somewhere along the way, that jealousy had turned into something darker, something ugly. I had never imagined that my brother, the person I trusted most, could harbor such feelings of resentment. But the truth was undeniable now. His bitterness ran deep, and I had finally seen it for what it was. I had always trusted Ethan. He was my older brother, the person I turned to when I needed advice or someone to vent to. He had been the one to encourage me to adopt Ava, telling me that I'd be a great mother. But now, the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how wrong I had been about him. It all came to a head one evening when I overheard a conversation at a family barbecue. I had stepped outside for a few moments, hoping to get some fresh air, when I heard Ethan's voice drifting from the back porch. I thought nothing of it at first, but when I heard the words he was saying, my heart stopped. "I don't know why she keeps pretending," Ethan was saying, his voice low but clear. "Ava's just a mistake. She's a charity case. Lila's not her real mom, and no matter what she does, she never will be. It's pathetic." I couldn't breathe. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, each one more painful than the last. I had always known Ethan was distant, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. He wasn't just making casual jokes anymore. He was actively tearing down everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for. I stayed hidden behind the door, my hands shaking, as Ethan continued. "Lila's been playing this act for years. But deep down, she knows. She knows that Ava's not her real daughter, and I'm just tired of watching her pretend otherwise." I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped into the yard, confronting him before he could say another word. "Ethan!" I shouted, my voice trembling with anger. He turned to me, startled but unfazed. How long has this been going on?" I demanded, my eyes burning with fury. "How long have you been talking about Ava like this behind my back?" He didn't flinch. He didn't even look guilty. Instead, he just shrugged. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, like. You're the one who's blind to it. I'm not the only one who sees how you're playing the victim with this whole adoption thing. You're not her real mom. You're just trying to fill a hole in your life." I was speechless. I couldn't believe the man I had known my whole life, the person I had turned to for support, had been secretly spreading rumors about me, undermining everything I had built. All those years of me trying to prove myself as Ava's mother, as a good mother, had been shattered by the person who was supposed to have my back. "I trusted you," I whispered, the betrayal too much to bear. "All this time, you've been pretending to be supportive, to be part of my family, but all along you've been stabbing me in the back." Ethan's face hardened. "You don't get it, do you?" he said coldly. "I'm not the bad guy here. You're the one who's messed up. You've made this whole thing into a story, a drama that you want everyone to feel sorry for you. It's pathetic." I shook my head, not knowing whether to cry or scream. How could he be so callous? How could he have hidden his true feelings for so long, pretending to be the supportive brother, while secretly poisoning my reputation, my family, my life? I walked away, tears threatening to fall, but I wouldn't let them. I wasn't going to let Ethan's cruelty break me. I had Ava to protect, and no matter what he said or did, I was going to stand by her. But the damage had already been done. Ethan's words had dug deep, and the trust between us had been irreparably shattered. I had lost my brother. The days after the confrontation with Ethan felt like a blur. Each time I stepped outside, I couldn't escape the whispers. It was like the world had shifted beneath me, and I was slowly sinking deeper into a pit I couldn't crawl out of. Friends, family, even neighbors. Everyone had their own opinion about what had been going on between Ethan and me. But what hurt the most was that many of those opinions weren't even based on truth. They were based on the lies Ethan had planted. It started with casual comments. At a coffee date with my old friend, Rachel, she asked, "Lila, are you sure everything's okay with Ethan? I mean, he's been acting weird, and I've heard him say some things about your family. He's not exactly thrilled about Ava." I froze, her words hitting me like a slap. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Rachel hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't want to start trouble, but I've heard him talk about you, about how you forced the adoption on the family, how Ava isn't really one of us." My heart sank. I forced a smile, brushing it off as a misunderstanding. He's just upset, Rachel. Don't listen to him. But inside I knew. I knew there was more to this than just a few bad words. It wasn't the first time I'd heard something like that. I had heard similar things from my mother, and even from friends I considered close. It wasn't just whispers anymore. Ethan's poison was spreading, and I was the target. At dinner with my parents a few nights later, I could feel the tension in the room. My mother, usually the warmest person, had been distant, her eyes avoiding mine. Finally, she spoke. Lila, you've done so much for Ava. But, have you ever thought about how hard this must be for Ethan? He's been struggling with it. He never really accepted her, you know? The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I shook my head in disbelief. You knew he felt this way all this time, and you didn't tell me. My mother faltered, her voice soft. It's complicated, Lila. He never really wanted to talk about it, but he never really saw Ava as part of this family. It's been hard for him. I felt sick. Ethan's feelings were one thing, but what was worse was realizing that my own family had allowed it to go on for so long. They had let Ethan undermine me, let him spread his bitterness in the name of family loyalty. They hadn't stood by me. They hadn't protected Ava. In the following days, the weight of the betrayal pressed down on me. I couldn't escape the feeling that something had been wrong for a lot longer than I'd admitted to myself. All those years of thinking I was doing the right thing, of thinking that my family was supportive. Now, I saw it for what it truly was. Ethan had never accepted Ava as his niece, and I had been blind to it. I started to question everything. Had I been too naive? Had I ignored the signs? How many times had Ethan made me second-guess myself, pretending to support me while secretly tearing down the foundation of my family? The realization was overwhelming. My mind kept circling back to the same thought. This wasn't just about a few hurtful comments. This wasn't just about Ethan's jealousy or resentment. It was deeper than that. He had always seen Ava as a mistake, a disruption in the picture-perfect family he had envisioned. And I was just the person who'd forced that disruption upon him. I couldn't keep living like this, trying to fix a relationship that had been broken for years. Ethan's betrayal had already poisoned too much. The tipping point had come, and I realized I couldn't trust him anymore. I couldn't pretend that things would ever be the same. It was time to let go, no matter how hard it was. The sting of betrayal was still fresh, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let Ethan get away with what he'd done. He thought he could destroy everything I had worked so hard to build, but he was wrong. It was time for him to see the consequences of his actions. I wouldn't let him tear apart my family without a fight. I spent the next few days planning, weighing my options carefully. I couldn't confront him head-on, not yet. Ethan was too dangerous when cornered, and if I confronted him directly, I knew he would turn the tables and make me look like the villain. I needed to be smart about this. I needed to expose him without giving him a chance to spin the narrative in his favor. It started small, subtle. At the next family dinner, I made sure to sit next to my mom. She'd always been the one to hear the truth from me, and I knew she'd be the one to understand. While we talked about Ava and the challenges of raising a child, I dropped a few well-timed comments about Ethan's concerns over the adoption. I didn't name him outright, but the message was clear. I know that raising Ava hasn't always been easy, I said casually, watching my mom's reaction. There are always people who think they know what's best, people who have a lot to say about how you should raise your child, even when they have no idea what it's really like. My mom gave me a concerned look, but I saw the wheels turning in her mind. What do you mean? She asked, her tone gentle but unsure. Oh, nothing specific, I replied. Just people who think that the adoption was some kind of mistake, that Ava's not really part of this family. I mean, it's hard when someone you love can't see things the way you do. It wasn't much, but it was enough to plant the seed. Over the next few days, I repeated the strategy with a few other relatives. I didn't accuse anyone directly. I didn't have to. I simply spoke in generalities, letting the words linger in the air. Each time I spoke, the story took shape, slowly revealing Ethan's manipulation. The more I spoke, the more people began to notice. Aunt Linda, who had always been close to Ethan, gave me a knowing look when I spoke about feeling unsupported. I've heard some of those things too, she admitted quietly, after the others had left the room. But I never realized it was this bad. By the time a few weeks had passed, the whispers had started to grow louder. I could feel the shift, the change in how people were viewing Ethan. The family was beginning to see the cracks in his facade. I didn't have to say much more. I let their own suspicions do the work for me. But I wasn't finished yet. I still had one last piece of the puzzle to put into place. I had evidence, messages, recordings, small moments that had been captured without Ethan's knowledge. The texts where he called Ava a burden, where he told others I was making a mess of things. The proof of his deceit was hidden in plain sight, and I knew exactly when to bring it forward. One afternoon, while Ethan was busy with friends, I showed the family one of the most damning messages he had sent to a close friend. The message was clear. She's not my niece. She's a mistake, and I wish Lila would just admit it. I didn't need to say anything. I just let them read it for themselves. The silence in the room was deafening. I could feel the weight of their judgment, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was in control again. The truth was out. Ethan's lies had been exposed, and there was no going back. But I wasn't done yet. He had hurt me, and now it was time to make sure he faced the consequences of what he had done. Slowly, carefully, I was stripping him of the power he had tried so hard to maintain. The family was no longer under his influence. The betrayal was exposed, and Ethan had no way of hiding from it anymore. As the truth about Ethan's behavior spread through the family, the lines were drawn. The fallout was inevitable. On one side, there were those who rallied behind me, angry and hurt on my behalf. My Aunt Linda, who had always been close to Ethan, pulled me aside after the message was revealed. "I can't believe he'd do this to you," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "You've done nothing but love Ava. If anyone's the mistake here, it's Ethan, not you." I felt a surge of relief. It wasn't just about the message. It was the support, the validation that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't overreacting. I had always believed in the family unit, that blood meant something. But now, as I saw the people who stood with me, I realized that real family wasn't about shared genes. It was about loyalty, love, and mutual respect. And that was something Ethan had never given me. But then there were others, those who sided with Ethan, unwilling to see the truth. My parents, still uncertain about the depths of Ethan's resentment, tried to stay neutral. "Lila, maybe you're reading too much into this," my mom said softly, her voice full of hesitation. "Ethan's just going through a phase. He didn't mean those things. You know how he can be. He doesn't always think before he speaks." I stared at her, the hurt bubbling up. "Mom, this isn't a phase. Ethan has been doing this for years. You just didn't want to see it. He's been tearing me down behind my back, and you've been defending him." My mother's eyes welled up with tears. "Lila, I'm trying to protect you both. I don't want you two fighting." But the fight wasn't mine to start. It was Ethan's. And I was done being the only one who was blind to it. As the weeks passed, the tension in the family grew unbearable. Conversations shifted awkwardly when I entered the room, and family gatherings became a battleground of whispered arguments and judgment. The worst part was that even as Ethan's actions became undeniable, some still refused to confront him. They tried to soften the blow, to downplay the damage he had caused, convincing themselves that I was the one making things work. But I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. I knew what I had to do. Ethan had been playing this game for far too long, pretending to be a victim, all while systematically trying to destroy everything I held dear. Now, it was my turn to protect what was mine, my daughter, my family, my sanity. I started by distancing myself from him. I stopped going to the family events where I knew he would be present. I canceled dinners, skipped gatherings, and made it clear to anyone who asked that I would no longer tolerate his presence in my life. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Ava. She needed to know that she was safe, that the people around her respected her, and that no one, not even family, could undermine her. The more I distanced myself, the more Ethan's influence started to erode. I knew he was furious, but his anger only made it easier for me to stay strong. Every time I heard about his attempts to cause trouble or manipulate others into feeling sorry for him, I felt a cold sense of satisfaction. His lies were no longer working. The family was waking up, and his carefully constructed world was falling apart. But I wasn't done yet. Ethan's actions had crossed a line, and as much as I wanted to turn the other cheek, I knew that silence wasn't an option. I couldn't let him have the last word. I needed to keep my distance from him, for Ava's sake, for my own peace of mind, and for the integrity of the life I had worked so hard to build. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I was at home, preparing dinner for Ava, when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ethan standing on the porch, his face twisted in anger. He didn't even give me a chance to speak before he launched into his tirade. "You think you've won, don't you?" He spat, his eyes narrowed. "You think you've exposed me for the world to see. Well, guess what, Lila? You're the one who's been playing everyone. You've been manipulating the family this whole time, turning them against me." I crossed my arms, staring at him with a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. "Ethan, I didn't manipulate anyone. You've been poisoning everything. Our family, my relationship with Ava, everything. And I'm done pretending like it's not happening." He laughed bitterly, stepping closer. "Oh, please. You think you're some kind of hero, don't you? You've been playing the victim, acting like I'm the bad guy, but you're the one who's been twisting the truth. You've made everyone believe I'm the villain while you're the poor, misunderstood martyr." My heart raced, but I wasn't backing down. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the damage he had done, the years of subtle manipulation that had nearly torn everything apart. I took a deep breath, and without thinking twice, I laid it all bare. "You're the manipulator, Ethan," I said, my voice low and steady. "You've been trying to destroy me for years. You planted seeds of doubt about Ava, called her a mistake, tried to get the family to turn against me. You never accepted her. You never accepted me. And I'm done letting you ruin everything." His face paled. He opened his mouth to argue, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. For a moment, there was silence, the weight of what I had just said hanging between us. I could see the anger in his eyes, but there was something else too, fear. For the first time, I could tell that he was losing control of the narrative, and it rattled him. I continued, pushing forward. "I know what you've been saying behind my back. How you've called Ava a charity case. How you've told people that I'm just playing pretend. You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you? But I've been watching. I've seen the cracks in the way you treat us." Ethan's hands balled into fists. "You're delusional. You've twisted everything, Lila. I never said those things. You're just making it all up to make yourself feel better. You're the liar here." I shook my head, not letting his words shake me. "I'm not the liar. You've been playing a game for years, Ethan. You've been pretending to be the supportive brother, while secretly undermining everything I've worked for. You've spread lies, told people that Ava doesn't belong in this family, that I'm not a real mother. You've tried to poison everyone's minds, and you almost succeeded." His face twisted in anger, but I saw something else flicker in his eyes, something like shame, something like realization. The weight of my words hit him harder than I anticipated. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I didn't need to say anything more. He was finally realizing the extent of what he had done, and the truth was too much for him to swallow. He had underestimated me, and now the full scope of his betrayal was laid bare. "You thought I'd just let you walk all over me, didn't you?" I said quietly, my voice firm. "Well, I'm not your punching bag anymore. I'm done." For a moment he stood there, his face a mix of fury and disbelief. Then, with one final glare, he turned and walked away, his steps heavy with defeat. As I watched him disappear down the driveway, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had finally spoken the truth. I had finally stopped letting him manipulate me. It was over. But as the door clicked shut behind me, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the last I'd hear from him. Ethan might have been silenced for now, but his jealousy, his rage, would eventually boil over again. And when it did, I would be ready. The days that followed the confrontation with Ethan were a blur. The shockwaves from that night still echoed through the family, and the reactions were as varied as I had expected. Some rallied behind me, others stood with Ethan, refusing to believe the truth about his actions. But the most important thing was that, for the first time in years, I felt a sense of clarity. The truth had come out, and with it, the strength to move forward. Ethan's supporters, the ones who still believed his version of events, slowly distanced themselves from me. My parents, torn between loyalty to their son and the undeniable reality of what he had done, struggled to choose a side. My mother, unable to look me in the eye for days, finally sat down with me one afternoon. "Lila," she said softly, her voice laced with guilt. "I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how deep this really went. I'm sorry for not standing by you when you needed me most. I tried not to let my emotions overwhelm me. I understood the complexity of the situation, but it didn't make it any easier. I get it, Mom. I do. But Ethan has been hurting me, and you let it happen. I can't keep pretending like that's okay." She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I know. I'm sorry, Lila. I don't know what to say. I was blinded by my own guilt, by wanting to keep the family together. But I should have seen what was happening. Despite her apology, things would never be the same between us. The trust had been broken, and though I knew she was trying, it was hard to erase the years of silence, the years of being complicit in Ethan's lies. Aunt Linda, though, remained a pillar of support. She reached out to me after the storm settled, telling me how proud she was of my strength. "I know it's hard, but you did what was best for you and Ava," she told me. "And that's what matters most. Family isn't about keeping the peace. It's about standing up for what's right." Her words resonated with me. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but I had Ava. I had the one thing that mattered most in my life, and we would rebuild together, no matter how many people doubted us. As for Ethan, the family slowly turned their back on him. The lies he had spread had been exposed, and the ripple effects of his betrayal left him isolated. He tried to salvage his relationships, reaching out to a few people who had once been close to him, but his words no longer held the same weight. The family saw him for what he was: manipulative, vindictive, and dangerous. I had no intention of ever speaking to him again. After everything, after the hurt he caused Ava, there was nothing left for me to say. Ethan had chosen his path, and now he had to walk it alone. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Ava, watching the sun dip behind the horizon, I felt a calm settle over me. Ava, sitting beside me, her head resting on my shoulder, was the one thing that made all the pain worthwhile. "We're okay, sweetheart," I whispered to her, brushing her hair from her face. She smiled up at me, her eyes full of trust. "Yeah, Mom, we're stronger than ever," she replied. And in that moment, I realized the truth of her words. Ethan might have torn apart the fabric of our family, but in the end, Ava and I were unbreakable. We were stronger than any betrayal, any lie, any attempt to tear us down. Together, we could face anything. As for Ethan, I had no doubt he would eventually face the consequences of his actions. The family would see him for who he truly was, just as I had. And when he did, he would have no one to blame but himself. But for now, all that mattered was Ava and me. And as long as we had each other, nothing else could hurt us. Do you think I made the right choice by cutting ties with Ethan and the family, or should I have given them another chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe.